Liam Santos had spent most of his young life weaving through the noise and chaos of Manila's streets, carrying a tiny Bluetooth speaker and a dream much bigger than the cracked sidewalks beneath his feet. At 15, he had already learned how to survive the long days of heat, the smell of fried street food, the horns of jeepneys, and the steady flow of strangers passing by without noticing him. But on the days when the sun dipped low and the city lights flickered on, his voice rose above everything. It wasn't loud, it was pure, bright, and filled with something that made people stop for just a moment. He sang beside sorry stores, under overpasses, near busy bus terminals, earning a few coins at a time to help his mother buy rice and pay rent. His dream of ever leaving those streets felt impossible, but he kept singing anyway. One evening, a tourist from Los Angeles heard his voice as she walked through a crowded market. She stopped, recorded him on her phone, and posted it online with the caption, "This boy deserves the world." Within 24 hours, it had 4 million views. Filipino communities around the globe shared it non-stop, and comments poured in calling him the street angel. News pages reposted the clip, reaction videos appeared on YouTube, and celebrities were tweeting about him. Then, out of nowhere, an email arrived. AGT producers wanted him to audition in America. At first, he thought it was a scam. When he realized it was real, he ran home and showed his mom, who covered her mouth and cried. They had no passports, no money, no idea how to travel, but AGT arranged everything. On the day of his flight, Liam stood in the airport wearing a borrowed jacket and shaking with excitement and fear. It was his first time leaving the Philippines, his first time on an airplane, and the first time he felt like his dream might actually come true. As the plane rose above the clouds, he looked out the window, whispered a soft prayer, and told himself he would give everything he had the moment he stepped onto that stage. When Liam finally walked onto the massive AGT stage in Los Angeles, he felt almost too small for the bright lights and thousands of cheering people. He could feel his heart pounding so fast he thought the microphone might pick it up. Wearing a simple white shirt and jeans donated by a Filipino community group in California, he answered Simon's questions with a nervous smile. He told the judges he came from Manila, that he used to sing on the streets to help his mother, and that he never imagined standing in a place like this. The whole room went quiet, listening closely, sensing how real and unpolished his story was. Then the music began, just a soft instrumental, the kind he used to play from his old speaker back home. His first note was shaky, but his second lifted with confidence, and by the time he reached the chorus, the entire arena felt transformed. His voice floated through the air, gentle but powerful, filled with emotion only someone who had lived through hardship could carry. The audience slowly rose to their feet, clapping and cheering as he hit a long, controlled note that sent chills through the room. Sophia wiped a tear from her cheek. Simon leaned forward with a surprised smile, recognizing raw talent in its purest form. When Liam finished, the room exploded with applause. He stood frozen, overwhelmed, not used to being celebrated. Then, suddenly, Heidi rose from her seat, slammed her hand onto the golden buzzer, and golden confetti burst from the ceiling like a dream coming alive right in front of him. Liam dropped to his knees, crying into his hands as the audience roared. For a boy who once sang for coins on crowded sidewalks, this wasn't just a moment, it was a miracle. Liam's life changed overnight once he advanced beyond auditions. Instead of the loud Manila streets, he now woke up in a small AGT-provided hotel room in Hollywood, where everything felt too quiet, too clean, and too unreal. He practiced constantly because deep down he feared that one bad performance could send him home. Every morning he warmed up his voice by humming softly while staring out the window at the city he'd only seen in movies. Between rehearsals, he filmed confessionals for the show, trying to sound confident even though his hands trembled off camera. The pressure was heavier than he expected. For the first time in his life, millions of people were watching him. He often video called his mom in Manila late at night, telling her he missed her cooking, her jokes, and even the street noise outside their old apartment. She always reminded him that God had opened this door and that he must walk through it bravely. During practice week, producers encouraged him to choose a song that showed depth and emotion. He chose a powerful ballad he used to sing on sidewalks late at night when the city felt kinder. The stage for Hollywood Week felt enormous, with screens, lights, and a live orchestra behind him. When he stepped into rehearsal, People whispered about the street angel who had gone viral. Some contestants were intimidated, others inspired. On the day of his actual performance, his hands were shaking so much he could barely hold the microphone. But the moment the lights dimmed and the first note played, he remembered everything he had fought for. His voice carried emotion that felt heavy and honest, rising into clean runs that surprised even him. Cameras zoomed in on the judges' faces, catching their stunned expressions. The audience began to cheer before he even finished. By the time he hit the final note, the crowd was already on their feet, clapping and shouting his name. Social media erupted again. The clip trended on TikTok, YouTube, and Filipino TV networks. Fans posted reaction videos, remix edits, and messages about how his voice gave them hope. For Liam, the applause felt surreal, every sound of celebration echoing louder than anything he'd ever heard on the streets he once called his stage. The semi-finals arrived faster than Liam expected, bringing even more pressure. This round wasn't just a performance, it determined who would make it to the AGT finals, and the stakes were higher than ever. Liam stood backstage holding a small rosary his mother had given him before he left the Philippines. He closed his eyes, replaying her voice in his mind telling him to breathe and trust. The theater was packed, brighter, louder, and more intimidating than any stage he'd ever seen. Producers told him they wanted to show a new side of his talent, so he chose a modern pop song with a gospel twist, something that mixed his street-style emotion with a more polished energy. As he stepped onto the stage, lasers and moving spotlights created a glowing path around him. The crowd cheered, but he focused on the microphone, gripping it tight to steady his nerves. The music started with a soft piano intro, and Liam's voice entered gently, almost like a whisper. As the beat grew stronger, so did he. Halfway through the song, he lifted his voice into a soaring run that stunned the entire room. People began chanting his name before he even finished the bridge. He hit the last high note with everything he had, letting his voice fall back into a soft, emotional ending. When the stage went dark, the audience erupted. Simon leaned into his microphone and told Liam that he was born to be on this stage, calling the performance one of the highlights of the season. When voting opened, fans from all over the world posted screenshots of their votes, urging others to support the Filipino teen who had captured hearts everywhere. Hours later, during the live results show, Liam stood with trembling hands as Terry Crews read the names. When he announced that Liam was going to the finals, the theater exploded with cheers. Liam covered his mouth, tears streaming down his face. For a boy who once sang for spare change, reaching the AGT finals felt like stepping into a dream he never knew he was allowed to have. For the grand finale, Liam knew this performance would define everything: his past, his pain, his dreams, and the millions of people now rooting for him. Every contestant around him was stressed, but Liam felt something deeper, something heavier. He wasn't just performing to win, he was performing for the kids still singing on the same streets he left behind. AGT producers suggested doing a big classic hit, but Liam quietly told them he wanted to perform an original song he had written during his nights in Manila. It was a simple melody, created on a cheap borrowed guitar, about hope rising from poverty and courage growing even in the darkest corners of life. At first the team hesitated, but when they heard him sing it softly in a rehearsal room, every person there fell silent. They agreed instantly. For the final stage, the AGT crew transformed the entire theater into a living memory of his homeland. Giant screens showed cinematic shots of Manila, the jeepneys, the crowded markets, the lantern lights at night. When Liam stepped onto that stage wearing a black outfit with a subtle Philippine sun pin on his shirt, he felt as if the entire world paused. The lights dimmed to a soft warm glow, giving the stage the feeling of a Manila sunset. He held the microphone close to his chest as the first gentle chords filled the room. His voice entered soft and trembling, carrying emotion too real to fake. As he moved into the chorus, he opened his eyes and saw people crying in the front rows. Judges leaned forward, caught in the honesty of his words. When he reached the bridge, a powerful line about believing in yourself when no one else does, he lifted his voice into a raw, soaring cry that shook the entire room. Even Simon, usually calm and composed, put a hand over his heart. The audience rose to their feet long before he finished. When he delivered the final note, a quiet, breathy ending that echoed across the theater, a long moment of silence followed, an emotional pause before the explosion of applause. People screamed his name, waving flags, wiping tears. Social media exploded with clips of the performance within seconds. Fans across the globe posted reactions like, "This is the greatest AGT finale moment ever," and, "A Filipino kid just shook the entire world." Liam stepped off stage overwhelmed, shaking, and crying, knowing no matter what happened next, he had given the world everything inside him and more. Results night was a storm of emotion, nerves, and electricity. The AGT theater was packed tighter than ever, lights sweeping across the crowd as all the finalists stood on stage holding hands. Liam felt his heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. He kept replaying his mom's voice in his head, telling him that win or lose, he had already made the Philippines proud. Terry Crews dragged out the suspense the way only he could, announcing the acts one by one until only two remained, Liam and one more finalist. The room was so silent that Liam could hear the buzz of the stage lights above him. He squeezed the rosary in his pocket and whispered a tiny prayer. Then Terry took a deep breath and said the words that would change the boy's life forever. "America's Got Talent champion is Liam Santos." The moment his name echoed through the arena, confetti blasted overhead, and Liam dropped to his knees in complete shock. Tears streamed down his face as the audience roared with deafening cheers. Suddenly, he felt arms around him. His mother had been secretly flown in by the show. She ran onto the stage crying, and he hugged her as tightly as he could, burying his face in her shoulder. It was a moment so emotional the judges stood quietly, smiling with pride. Simon walked forward and told him he had not just won a competition, he had inspired the world. Overnight, the media exploded with headlines